Hey, what is going on, IK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be taking a look at what I think is the most important element of how players, more so members of management, overall can contribute to a healthy early development of a kingdom and why it is so important to do so within arguably the first couple days up to the first week of a kingdom's development that can really set you on a good trajectory going forward for the longevity of however long your kingdom is going to be up and running for. But really investing early can set you up for success. Before we get started and dive into all of that goodness, make sure, as always, if you enjoyed the content, sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, Discord link will be in the description, pinned comment below. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about why it is so important for a kingdom early on to do certain things that are going to set you up for success. Some of those being, and probably let me just start off with the most important overarching point, is that communication, introductions, and trying to build relationships is by far the most important areas that we're going to be touching on today that leaders should be doing first and foremost, and then members, when they're able to contribute and help out in these areas, are able to do so as well. But let me start kind of high level here. So when a kingdom is first starting out, you pretty much are not grabbing anything. You are positioning yourself where you're kind of nesting, where you might find groups that are clumping, and hiving is another term that they'll use, where they'll try and kind of start off at the early levels that are on the far outside and then kind of work their way in. From this, what happens is that they'll, again, as I mentioned, they'll hive at outer cities and they'll kind of almost call dibs on them before they open up to be attacked. And this pretty much happens throughout, where eventually, typically because there's a lot of the lower level cities that will open up first, you're not usually going to end up having a lot of resistance or kind of fights over them, skirmishes. This typically happens once you start having the level kind of four, I would say 4, 5, and 6 cities that start opening up. Typically the really far outer ones, which you can see here, right? Like the 1s and the 2s aren't really going to be there. It's more the 3, 4s, and 5s that you're really going to start seeing it on, just because there's less of those cities than they're going to be for the ones on the outer side. So one of the best things you can do is early on in a kingdom, right? If you're someone who's in management, you're a leader, you're an officer, is reach out to top leaders on the boards. An example of doing this would be going here on your leaderboards. And, oops, I'm not even on. This is what happens when I'm not even utilizing a character that, oops, where am I going? 160. Oh, that one I don't think is high enough level anyways. But in short, what you're going to do, and I'll work my way to one, is you're going to go on the leaderboards and you're going to take a look at alliances that are there at the top of the boards. And you're going to reach out to however many, right? Let's say it's the top 10. Let's say, I actually can't go here. So let's say, you reach out to the top 10, the top 12, 18, 22, however many you want, right? And the best thing is to try and reach out to these individuals and try and get everyone into a Discord server, maybe even if, let's just say not everyone. Here's a creative way, a little pro tip here. Ask them to make an alt account and then create an alliance that is invite only, and that's where you're going to have just leaders of other alliances join, right? Because remember, you can't add anyone, so you can't make like a custom group chat. But what you can do is ask them to make alts, verify themselves, and then join another alliance that someone just makes as invite only. And then from there, you can use alliance chat, or better yet, set up a group chat, an alliance group chat within that alliance. And for anyone that is unable to get Discord or come on Discord, this is a great workaround where you can still utilize the translation feature in game, and then you can have any of the leaders that might just be from an international country, maybe Discord's blocked, maybe they've just never used it before and they might not be forthcoming and wanting to do so. That's a great way that you can kind of still operate within the middle, compromise. However, for situations where you can be utilizing Discord, then yeah, you want to try and get everyone onto a Discord server, whether it's going to be the Kingdom server or a management server to start. Maybe it's a group chat if you only have 10 people that you can work with. However, still doing a server is, I think, better approach, because if you ever do have more than 10, especially if you're eventually going to include officers outside or beyond just the leaders, that's a great way to start. Then what you're going to do from there is, once you have as many of these people, and remember, if you're not going to get everyone in initially, bear in mind it may take some time. It's not as though you're going to get people to respond within the first 5 to 10 minutes of when you reach out to them. Have some realistic expectations. This could take a day or two or a couple days. And what you do is you just still keep reaching out. Let's say you reach out to the top 20 alliances in the kingdom, but only 10 of them respond to you, and then only 8 of them actually join the Discord. Well, that's okay. Give it a couple days or a week, and then just message those leaders again, right? Or what you do is, if you don't hear from some of those leaders in a couple days, message the officers and say, hey, look, we'd like to try and get a representative from this alliance in here so we can communicate and discuss. Those are important things to do, right? Again, thinking outside the box, be creative, really kind of do your due diligence. Then, once you get at least one rep from each of the alliances that you think, and like I said, it's always better to start with more than less, because again, showing that you're offering kind of widespread or larger inclusion is going to allow for more players and more alliances to hopefully keep high activity, but better and more importantly, have a larger base of retention going forward, right, for a longer period of time. So these are really important things to do when we're going through this process, especially early on, right? Because really at the end of the day, the most important thing for Kingdom Health is you want to try and have as many active players and therefore as much player retention for as long as you possibly can. So after you've gotten everyone into a Discord, if you will, or into an in-game alliance, then the next step is to really start figuring out how everyone views not only the game they're playing, but then kind of how they view what to do in the kingdom. An example of this would be, start off with one question at a time, right? Really have a discussion. Sometimes when you're in game, you can utilize multiple group chats. If you're on Discord, you can have multiple channels or even use threads as a way to kind of tackle topics one by one. The worst thing you can do is just kind of let it be a free-for-all and say, hey, how does everyone feel we should manage the kingdom? Or how does everyone feel we should set goals and policies and standards? What does everyone think rules should be? Those are too broad and too vague of questions that will not entice, but they will elicit more of kind of widespread answers. And you want discussion and conversation at times, especially with where you're at now. You want it to be focused, really more hyper-focused on certain areas. So an example of what may be a more appropriate way to do it would be to say, hey, for King of the Hill event, right? Does anyone feel like, or better yet, you make a channel, you make a group chat where it's just for King of the Hill. You make something that's just for kind of general PvP rules. You make something else that is for COR. You make something for gathering. You make something for, any other event. It could be Spider for Titan Tula, right? These are the types of things you want to do. Right, you may, and so this allows you to have more of a hyper-focused conversation to stay on task, right, and or stay focused on this specific discussion type or topic. And then because of that, now you're only having discussions about this and it's not branching off and going elsewhere. Then you can also have a general conversation chat if you want. And then the objective here is to try and figure out to get as many people, right, to try and find a majority or get the most amount of, if not everyone, right, which is the hopes, is that to try and get everyone on board to where everyone can be doing things in a unified / aligned way, with how we approach, with how we give out information, and then with the actions that the leaders, and by extension the officers, are taking. Because when you're starting off in the beginning of a kingdom, you have to view it as though you're basically thousands of people that are getting dropped onto a planet or to a area, and you're just being told to figure it out. You know, what do you do? How do you react? And what are those steps that you take when you don't know the next person, when you don't know these people, and you're really just meeting them for the first time? That's really how the mindset that you have to approach it in. And with that, also trying to imagine how you would want to conversate with someone. How would you want someone to conversate with you? What's the tone that you would want someone to take with you? Therefore, the tone you should take with others. So, you know, applying a little bit of TLC, that tender love and care, is really important when you're starting off in these situations, because that's really what it is, right? When you're playing kingdom builders, if you're not going in with an organized group, you have to assume that, one, you don't know someone else like they don't know you, and that applies for all the other individual alliances. So you have to kind of think about what is the best way to really start off introducing, bringing people in, and then where do you start conversations from? And these are the steps I would recommend taking. This, of course, expands beyond Infinity Kingdom, but if we're just talking for kingdoms themselves, this is what you do. You reach out to these people, you get them into an area, you set up these areas to have a conversation and talk about, and then you allow for people to give their feedback, their suggestions, right, in specific topic related channels or areas. And then if needed, right, you collect those, you get the feedback, do votes if needed, and then you hopefully can have everyone get on board and going in a same direction, right, for a majority, if not everyone. And these are some of the best ways to really start out that are going to give new kingdoms that do not have some kind of a majority group or body that has come in at some point in the kingdom and everyone's kind of just individual alliances, the best ways to do the least amount of irreversible damage to the kingdom, and more importantly to its player base. So these are my recommendations on how you would start and just trying to get a foundation established. I may be making some more videos that will expand beyond this, but I really thought this was a great video to make, to explain and to show new kingdoms how you can go about operating, the steps you would take when you don't know anyone else and it's just you and your small group or you and your alliance and it's all these other alliances that are out there. And my very last kind of pro tip for you, for those that are still here staying to the end, is really go into a situation where you're not just trying to say, I want to do it this way or it's the highway. Really approach it from more of, hey, here is my suggestion. This is why I think my suggestion is good. Here are some of the pros and cons. And then listen to everyone else's suggestion and listen to what everyone else says. And most of the time, if you have a very well thought out suggestion, it's formatted nicely, you explain things well, you've listed out what the pros and cons of doing it are, that is a better way to go about it than trying to force feed and shove ideas and suggestions down people's throats because of the situation you're in, where there's not really kind of leverage on one way or another. One person doesn't have kind of any clout, right? Everyone is really for themselves in this type of a free-for-all environment. And so coming off humbly and being humble in your approach will kind of garner and hopefully earn you, if you want to call them popularity points. And that usually is a better way to do so, is when you have a very well thought out idea, you articulate it easy enough for everyone to understand, also for people that are speaking international language to translate, which means you're staying away from abbreviations or conjunctions or any of the kind of apostrophes that you would use on don'ts, right? An example would be just to say do not instead of saying don't. And so, yeah, I hope that helps. And that is pretty much, I think, it for me on this one. And again, really, really hoping that this video does a lot of wonders for new kingdoms. And of course, if anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, right? Have you applied these similar practices that I'm speaking about? Have you found them to be successful? Have you gone about doing things a different way when you're in a kingdom that doesn't have a large group that's coming into multiple alliances and it's just individual alliances all for themselves? Right? Let me know anything and everything in those comments down below. That is it for me. Until next time, I'll catch you later.